Sections of this video are sponsored. Viewfinder is a puzzle game that is perhaps a little too easy at times and has a story which I frankly didn't care about at all, but which is worth playing just for its mind-bending nature. I give it a 7 out of 10. Hexcells is my favourite of the three puzzle games, because while the later games add more complexity or randomly generated levels, the first game is the simplest and most satisfying. I give it a 7 out of 10. Smushi Come Home was a perfectly cosy game to play in an afternoon, not too difficult and full of adorable friends to make, though I will be forever upset that after finishing the game my Steam Deck ate my save. I give it an 8 out of 10. Marvel's Spider-Man was a game that I wasn't at all interested in until I first managed to get my hands on it at Gamescom in 2018, at which point it became one of my favourite titles of the year. I give it a 7 out of 10. The Light in the Darkness left me more upset than any game I've ever played, not due to the topic it covered, but entirely due to its incredibly disrespectful presentation. I give it a 0 out of 10. Special thanks to Arcade Distillery for providing the key to this game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the best of the new style Assassin's Creed games, though that's a little like saying it's better to get stabbed with a sharp knife than a dull one. It's not something you want either way, except maybe if Cassandra's the one doing the stabbing. I give it a 7 out of 10. Silent Hill: The Short Message has some parts I really like. I think it does a great job with its atmosphere and aesthetic, but has some painfully cringe dialogue and frustrating gameplay which lets it all down. I give it a 6 out of 10. Darksiders is the only entry in the series I actually like, because it plays to its strengths as an action-adventure game done well, rather than the genre changes of the later games. I give it a 7 out of 10. Turnip Boy Robs a Bank is a pretty fun roguelike which I'd think better of if I hadn't run into multiple game-ruining bugs while playing. I give it a 7 out of 10. Mail Time cements my love of cozy games by giving me another forest full of cute animals to explore and another affirming life lesson to live with once it's finished. I give it an 8 out of 10. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak is a game I've spent literally years of my life playing, and yet now that I've finally finished it, I don't think I ever want to touch it again. I give it an 8 out of 10. A tiny sticker tail makes me wish solving problems in real life was as simple as slapping the right sticker on them. I give it a 7 out of 10. Gridroad satisfies an itch that few other games do, but it can be kinda hard to understand where you've gone wrong when you fail one of its more complicated puzzles. I give it a 7 out of 10. Tunnet has a confusing and compelling core of setting up a network, but muddies the waters with rather pointless enemies and a largely frustrating, albeit ultimately satisfying ending sequence. I give it a 7 out of 10. Helldivers 2 was great with friends and is even a decent amount of fun solo, but most of my enjoyment came from the propaganda from the developers rather than actually playing the game. I give it an 8 out of 10. The Legend of Korra is a character action game based on the Avatar franchise, which you can't get anymore, and even if you could, it wasn't particularly worth your time. I give it a 6 out of 10. Coffee Talk Episode 2 Hibiscus and Butterfly brings back all your favourite characters from the first game, as well as introducing some great new cast members, and this time with a spooky mystery to solve in the background. I give it a 7 out of 10. Baldur's Gate 3 is a 100-hour epic about dating a variety of people until you ultimately settle down in hell with a big tiefling lady and the guy who tried to kill her, and something to do with mind flayers as well, I guess. I give it an 8 out of 10. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has a great story and characters I was utterly invested in, but is constantly hampered by its mind-numbing open world and deluge of frustrating minigames. I give it a 7 out of 10. Chillquarium is a little buggy and a little broken, but sometimes it's just nice to sit and watch some digital fish swim around, and for that there's nothing better. I give it a 7 out of 10. Loddlenaut is a short and sweet adventure through the sea where you clean up after a careless corporation, with my only complaint being how quickly it was over. I give it an 8 out of 10. Another Crab's Treasure had some pretty frustrating platforming, and the later half of the game was much less interesting, but its adorable world and characters helped carry me to the end. I give it a 7 out of 10. Stellar Blade has a surprisingly predictable and occasionally contradictory story, but after a slow start, the spectacle of the combat and fantastic music easily carry the rest of the game. I give it an 8 out of 10. SteamWorld Heist is a tactical RPG full of robots during which we finally fulfill humanity's dream of killing the moon. I give it an 8 out of 10. SteamWorld Quest: The Hand of Gilgamesh is a deck-building RPG with incredibly weird pacing, but a great cast of characters, fun card mechanics, and a good, if somewhat long, story. I give it an 8 out of 10. The Bureau XCOM Declassified is a tactical third-person shooter with perfectly adequate gameplay, but a story which goes weird places, makes little sense, and feels completely unfinished. I give it a 5 out of 10. Crawl is a dungeon-crawling roguelike which has a clear focus on multiplayer, but I have no friends and there's no online play, so I can't really say I enjoyed it all that much. I give it a 6 out of 10. Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail might actually be my favourite of the game's expansions, with a more vibrant world than ever before, characters I actually want to spend time with, and the introduction of some fantastic new jobs. I give it an 8 out of 10. Beltmatic stole a week of my life with its bewitching maths, puzzles, and factory setups, and while I could easily keep playing forever, I have to stop if I ever want to sleep again. I give it an 8 out of 10. Pictoquest: The Cursed Grids is a Picross game with the lightest smattering of RPG elements, which is kind of fun, but also kinda jank. I give it a 6 out of 10. Tinytown has a lot of charm, but not much else to hold my attention, having left me feeling completely satisfied with the game after barely 15 minutes. I give it a 6 out of 10. Pixel Cross: Story of Seasons is a game I finished more from a love of Picross and Story of Seasons rather than this particular game, but it at least has a lot of content for the price. I give it a 6 out of 10. Yakuza 4 was fun to finally finish after the 13-year break between attempts, but its split structure leaves it feeling more disjointed than the prior titles. I give it an 8 out of 10. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami is a short, noir-inspired adventure game where you have to unmask the Salami bandit using the logical prowess only a duck can have. I give it an 8 out of 10. Shapez is a relaxing puzzle strategy construction factory planning game, which sounds confusing at first, but it quickly became a favourite of mine. I give it an 8 out of 10. Croakoloco is an incremental frog collecting game, though compared to others I've played, it requires a lot more input to progress at a reasonable rate. I give it a 7 out of 10. Earth Defense Force 6 adds a lot more story to the usual EDF formula, and can feel kinda confused because of it, but for the most part it's the same bug-killing fun it's always been. I give it a 7 out of 10. Momodora Moonlit Farewell is a tight and compelling Metroidvania with some great music and multiple giant snakes, though with some wild difficulty spikes at times. I give it an 8 out of 10. Astro Bot expands on one of my favourite platformers in every way, but falls short of perfection with a handful of incredibly frustrating levels which almost put me off its completion. I give it an 8 out of 10. Calorie-Mate Liquid for game creators feels pretty terrible to play, and it isn't always clear with its progression, but its short length and weird concept make it at least interesting. I give it a 6 out of 10. Superliminal is a spectacular dream logic puzzle game which is ideally best to enter with as little knowledge as possible. I give it an 8 out of 10. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is almost the Zelda I love, with actual dungeons to puzzle your way through and a world that's fun to explore, but honestly the thing that lets it down is the gameplay. I give it an 8 out of 10. Doodle Factory is another of those factory games I'm so weak to, but it's shorter and buggier than any other I've played, and while it has some neat ideas, unless it's your first, it probably won't be your favourite. I give it a 7 out of 10. Special thanks to John Francis Badan for providing the key to this game.
Earth Defense Wars 5 was the first Earth Defense Wars game with humanoid enemies, which I can't say I expected at the time, but it did make for a nice change from shooting ants. I give it a 7 out of 10. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow was my first Castlevania, and for as much as I love it, the sheer amount of farming required to collect all the souls really drags an otherwise great game down, especially when the game crashes midway through a session. I give it a 7 out of 10. Special thanks to Konami for providing the key to this game. Castlevania Portrait of Ruin puts a spin on the usual format that allows the game to explore drastically different locations than normal, but ends up feeling kinda rushed with its lackluster level structure and rushed ending. I give it a 6 out of 10. Special thanks to Konami for providing the key to this game. TCG Card Shop Simulator needs a lot of balancing, especially in the late game, where it just becomes waiting around constantly for your XP to go up, but even for an early access game, it's surprisingly engrossing. I give it a 7 out of 10. Castlevania Order of Ecclesia experiments even more with the formula, this time by making the first half of the game incredibly stilted to play before opening up once you get to the actual castle, but it has a slightly more interesting story than the last one, I guess. I give it a 6 out of 10. Special thanks to Konami for providing the key to this game. Haunted Castle Revisited isn't the style of Castlevania for me, but it's much more forgiving than the original version, so even I managed to get through it. I give it a 7 out of 10. Special thanks to Konami for providing the key to this game. Castlevania Dominus Collection puts the DS games into a much more playable package, but simultaneously makes them less stable, so I can only advise it if you're comfortable trading new features for more bugs and crashes. I give it a 7 out of 10. Special thanks to Konami for providing the key to this game. Yakuza Dead Souls teaches us that being a man means jumping through hoops and putting up with awful performance to spend more time with the people you care about. I give it a 7 out of 10. Mouthwashing wants you to take responsibility for your actions and hopes it hurts while doing it. I give it an 8 out of 10.